Worship in English has been confused about the exact parameters of worship, and the same was true of Greek, which was the language at the heart. Like when these disputes over icons historically were happening, like when there was the huge iconoclastic dispute, that debate was happening mostly in Greek. Other languages too, but anyway. But the point is, the same confusion was there. Like there are times, kind of colloquially or historically, where you use the word worship in a very broad sense. So, like, there's this historic term, you might have run across it in a movie or something like that, where you'll like call like a mayor your worship. And nobody thinks that the mayor is a god, right? Like that's not like it's not like, or actually, here's an interesting one in the very old language of the Church of England wedding service. It talks about when they pledge each other their troth. Now, that's very, very old-fashioned language. They also use that, like, I-you worship is like this, it's like ivy worship. It's like this very old-fashioned flowery language. And it doesn't mean that you are worshiping the other person as a god. So what it means is great honor. Now, so when the disputes over icons were happening, there was this accusation going on that this was idol worship, that the icons themselves, as boards of wood and paint, or the equivalent, were being seen themselves as like the heavenly reality, this thing that is something that we worship, or that a saint presented in a holy image is being worshipped. And Orthodox Christians at the time and ever since have been emphatically clear, to the extent of clarifying the language, so that much as modern English tends to actually also be quite clear that worship, like, I'm trying to think of any exception, I can't think of any. When we talk about worship in contemporary English, as far as I can think of, it always means worshiping God. I don't know, anybody think of a counterexample where anybody says worship to mean anything else? Well, but even that, okay, well, we can get to that, but that's Bishop Benedict doesn't like that because that's not a correct translation. That's actually, Thomas is quoting some traditional English Orthodox, try that again, English translations of Orthodox hymns, speaking about the resurrection or the cross being worshipped. And that also is not strictly correct, as Bishop Benedict has pointed out to me, that they are, he's a supreme expert in translating various languages, including Greek and Slavonic and Latin. Anyway, in all those cases, the word that's being used is veneration. Veneration in the sense of great honor. That's what veneration means. You're expressing great honor. And there are plenty of things that we venerate, like in just ordinary society. We might not use the word, but if you're talking about some hero, some person that's done wonderful things, you might pay that person profound honor, and that's the implication of veneration. And then in a church context, which is really all we have to care about, they were very firmly making this distinction to say God and God alone is due worship. Nobody else, nothing else. We don't worship objects, we don't worship ideas, we don't worship other people. Not even the Virgin Mary. She's wonderful, we love her, we honor her above everybody else, but she's not God. And so only God deserves worship. But then, lots of things in the church are worthy of veneration because they've been made holy by contact with God. They have been participants in his divine activity, and we can experience his presence in them. And this is not like some novel idea. This is something that is an ancient part of our faith. I was actually talking with one of our young boys today about the burning bush. And you know, the story of the burning bush is that Moses is out taking care of his father-in-law's flock, and on the side of the mountain there is a bush that is burning, and it's not consumed, it's not being burnt up in the flames. And he goes to check this out and discovers that this is the sign, the visible sign of the holy presence of God. And he hears a voice immediately saying to him, "Moses, take off your sandals, because the place where you were standing is holy ground." And you know, that's the kind of sense that we're talking about, where the ground itself, because it's next to this burning bush, that also is not God, but is the sign of the presence of God. Like we don't confuse that. Like you can think of various examples of things that are immensely holy, terrifyingly holy, but are not themselves God. So we think about the dark cloud that surrounds Mount Sinai as Moses is given the tablets of the law. The Ark of the Covenant, incredibly holy, so holy that if you touched it unprepared, even to keep the Ark from falling to the ground, there's a shocking scene in the middle of the Old Testament where the people are carrying the Ark, and one of them stumbles, and this man is afraid that it's going to fall to the ground. He's like, "Oh no, we can't let that happen," and so he immediately rushes out to grab the Ark so that it won't fall, and he's struck dead, not because he was doing something wrong and evil, but because he was unprepared. He was unprepared to come into the very presence of the living God like that. And again, the Ark is not God. Nobody in the Old Testament or the New, or obviously to this day, thinks that the Ark is that's the body of God there, or something like that. Like bang on the side of it there, "Hi God." Like, no way. We hear in the liturgy that God is invisible, indescribable, uncontainable, changeless. That's the reality of God. That He has. There is nothing in heaven or earth that is the true image of God, except for Jesus Christ, because the Son of God is the radiant image of the Father, and that's an image that we actually can see, that people did see, because he condescended to be born on earth, and he had a body like ours, face like ours. He was something that could be captured in an image accurately. Like that's not it's not blasphemous to do that. And he's a human being, but he's also God. So, and this is like the heart of the argument, and what was clarified at the time is to say, no, obviously the image on the in paint there representing the person of the living God, Jesus, the Son of the invisible Father. Okay, no, that's not portraying the essence of his invisible divinity. Obviously not. In the same way that his body on earth wasn't doing that, right? Even I was talking about the transfiguration. We have the icon here in the corner of the ceiling. Just above the resurrection, that's this wonderful, amazing transfiguration where his the eyes of the disciples are being opened to a reality that is beyond human sight, and they see as far as they are able. But it's still not the full reality of his divinity. That's beyond human capacity to see. But then after all that, all the wonderful, amazing things are removed from their sight. Moses and Elijah that appeared with him, and this cloud, this bright cloud, and all that. All of that is gone from their sight when they look again. And it's just familiar Jesus, the same person that they'd known before. But they knew that the same ordinary seeming individual that they had been spending all this time with and talking with, that had led them up onto the mountain, he always is that amazing divine figure that they could barely perceive. That's what's going on in the icons, is that when we have an icon of Jesus himself, fairly straightforwardly, that's representing his person. And yes, it's his human nature that is being presented, but there's no separating the two. It's not like you can scrape off the humanity and just put that onto the icon. And that's basically the argument that the iconoclasts were making, is that you're dividing the person. So you only can show the human nature, and therefore the divine nature is not there. It can't be contained within the icon, and so you're making a false theological statement. You're dividing the humanity from the divinity. And those who loved icons said that you've got this completely backwards. When the disciples saw the body of the divine human Jesus, the Son of Mary, the Son of God, all that they could visibly see was his human nature, but the divine nature was united always to the human. And so to see the human Jesus was to see the Son of God. And as Jesus himself testifies, he who sees me sees the Father. That's his own words in the Gospel of John. And actually, as I think about it, also in the Gospel of Matthew. So he who sees me sees the Father. So this is our access point. It's actually a daily affirmation of the reality of the Incarnation. And the whole point of the Incarnation, this is the point, is that this is how we can see the invisible God. This is how we can encounter someone who cannot be contained, and all the rest. Now, to move on from there to consider the saints, we just take the same logic one step further, because a saint is someone, they are a saint not on their own merits, not like we don't believe in apotheosis, the kind of the Greek idea of you just are so amazing that the school board in heaven is looking at your transcript and says, John, congratulations, you've been graduated to godhood, and yay you, and you're so special, you're there with Hercules, and so on in heaven. That's not the Christian vision of heaven, of the divine. God is utterly other than us. And they're like, all the good that we do, all of our excellence, all of our holiness, like we're not adding anything, not a jot to the glory of God, because like even if you could talk about His holiness and ours in the same sentence and mean anything coherent, but even if we, for sake of argument, accept that even for one moment, we would also need to recognize that anything that any saint ever did, he was doing in the name of God. He wasn't doing it for his own sake or her own sake. They're doing it out of love and reverence for God. And in the way that the Apostle Paul says, it is no longer I who live, but Christ lives in me. Or the way that St. John the Baptist, when his disciples were like, hey, wait a minute, you're this great prophet, but everybody's no longer paying attention to you. They're following this new guy, Jesus. You should, have some sort of a jam, like a battle of the bands, and see who's better. And John rebukes his disciples and says, no, this is exactly what I came. I came to be a sign pointing, I'm not the way, the truth, and the life. He is. I'm pointing to him. And he says, I must decrease that he may increase. That's the way saints work. So that when we are looking at any holy person, if we are so fortunate as to meet a truly holy person in this life, their holiness is not their own possession. It is what we are seeing, that bright light that many people have testified that is perceptible in the presence of really holy people. It's not their light. It's the light of Christ shining from them. It's like a window pane that's been polished so clean that it's just transparent, and the light just shines right through it. So you're not saying, wow, glass, you're so amazing, look at all the light you're shining. No, it's the sun. It's the sun that's shining. We're just grateful that glass is clear so that it's not obscuring the light. That's what makes a person wonderful, is that they're not obscuring the light of God. And so when we are looking at the saints, at their life, at their icon, we are looking at them as signposts to heaven. They are each one in their own individual lives, their own particularities, which are important. They don't get erased. They don't get wiped off the picture. They're there. That's important to show that there's all these distinct gifts that God gave. They came from Him, and people use them for His glory. And the end result is that the kingdom of heaven is populated with all these unique, wonderful expressions of the glory and love of God. And that's the gist of why icons are important. It's both testifying to the incarnation, and it's testifying to the destiny of the human race, what we're here for. We are here to be in communion with the divine God. To go back to my reference to the burning bush, the idea is that we take into ourselves the life of God, and we are not consumed, but instead made into something new and glorious through that communion. So that's why we think it's important.